Hi, good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. This is the second focus meeting on the update to the Parks and Recreation element of the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan. My name is Ryan Stewart, and I'm a planner with the county's Department of Planning and Development. With me this evening is my colleague, Stephanie Cornejo. She is the Section Chief for Long Range Planning with the Fairfax County Park Authority. And also with me on the call with the county is Planning Commissioner Alice Wang, who's on our Planning Commissioner representative. Given that this is a virtual meeting, we do just have some housekeeping rules before we get started. As you may have seen, this meeting is being recorded so that it can be made available on our website, and those members of the community who have not been able to attend are able to view it. Of course, you all are welcome to go back and review it in case there's anything you may have missed. And the goal here with the community this evening is to have a conversation. But we would ask that you please mute your microphones unless you are speaking. This helps to cut down on any background noise or any incidental things that may happen and allows everyone to be able to hear the presentation. We will have a Q&A discussion section at the end. And when it comes for that time, please raise your hand using the hand raising feature, and we'll be sure to call on you. Also, if you're not comfortable speaking or if you just have an idea during the presentation, please feel free to utilize the chat function, and we'll be monitoring that as well. Alternatively, also in the chat function, we will be posting any links or background information or anything for the group to have. So this evening, Stephanie and I will be sharing an overview of the update to the Parks and Recreation element of the comp plan. I plan to give a brief overview of the plan itself. And then after that, I'll turn it over to Stephanie, who will share some details on what we're specifically focused on as part of the element. And then, as I mentioned, we'll open it up for some Q&A and discussion at the end. And I hope it's a lively discussion. So what exactly is the county's comprehensive plan? Well, it's a policy document that provides guidance on how the county should manage its built and natural environment in the long term. It's a document that's used by the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, other advisory bodies, county planners, and the public to inform any land use decision that may happen, whether that's planning or zoning or how land or the natural environment is in essence planned and used. But most importantly, it's a community-driven document. It relies very heavily on public input and public participation in formulating the policies that drive land use and development in the county. And so that's part of the reason why we're here this evening, is both to inform and both to connect with the community, but we also want to hear from you. We want to hear what your thoughts are, and we want your feedback as well. You can see here that a key part of the comprehensive plan is its body of county-wide policies. These are the broad goals and objectives that are applied, across the entire county for, what should happen with the county over the next 20 years or so. They're organized topically, and you can see that we've got elements such as land use, transportation, housing, environmental and heritage resources, economic development, and revitalization. We have a section on arts, and of course we have public facilities and the parks and rec element of the plan, which we're going to discuss in detail this evening. And although the comp plan is continually reviewed and updated, the policy plan itself as a whole has not been looked at really since the 1990s when it was first implemented. We've added some elements along the way. For example, we've had some recent guidance on affordable housing and on the presence of data centers in the county. But overall, we've not given the policy plan with all of its elements a holistic look. And so that's part of what we're doing with this project. The county has changed a lot in the 30 years. I think for those of you that have been in the county for some time, you've seen this. But most recently, the county has adopted some new policies and a new direction that we're taking account here in this project. We've got the social and racial equity policy known as One Fairfax. That was a partnership with the Fairfax County Public Schools. And then the county has also adopted its first county-wide strategic plan and also new policies on community health and wellness. And then, focusing in, the Park Authority too has undergone somewhat of an evolution in that they've been revising their mission, vision, and agency master plan as well in recent years. And most recently, they've adopted what's known as the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Access Strategy, or PROSA as it's known, which provides a framework for equitable access to the park system. Stephanie is going to tell you a little bit more about this in the future slides, but it's with these changes in mind that the county is really approaching this overall policy update. The work itself has been broken down into two phases, as you can see here on the slide, with different topical areas divided up among the different phases. And you can see that the parks and recreation element is actually in both phases. And this is by design. Phase one is going to focus mostly on the broad policy topics within the comprehensive plan. And then phase two is going to focus on the more operational or tactical considerations when it comes to implementing parks and recreation in the county, such as the urban parks framework or the service level standards for acreage and park facilities. And it's important to note that the comprehensive plan is, at its core, a guidance document. It's not a regulatory document, as you may see in some other laws or ordinances. Overall, although the state requires us to have a comprehensive plan, it is a policy and a guidance document in nature. It really outlines the vision for land use in the county, provides goals, objectives, and policies to achieve that vision. And then, zoning, on the other hand, you can see here, well, let me back up here. The comprehensive plan area plan volumes, these are geographical based planning documents that really look at planning from the scale of a region of the county or at the specific neighborhood level. And so the comprehensive plan is really two pieces. It's the policy plan for overall policy, and then the area-wide guidance, which we'll be focusing on in the future after the policy plan update. And now the zoning ordinance and the public facilities manual are two things that are really, these are the regulatory aspects of planning in the county. These are the things that really regulate how land is used and how the comprehensive plan is implemented. Essentially, the zoning ordinance details what a landowner is able to and not able to do with their land, and how that land is going to ultimately be developed. And then at a different level of detail, a greater one, the Public Facilities Manual provides guidelines governing the design of new development, the construction of new facilities, construction of new buildings, grading, all of these things, where this really provides the details of how land is actually developed on the ground after the zoning has already been established. So you can get a sense of the project's timeline and where we are. We are sort of, in the, I would say, the just beginning the middle of the project. We've been, since December of 2022, when the board authorized the project, we've been working very closely with the Planning Commission to really scope out the project and detail what the next steps will be, looking at what our needs are for internal research, and then also looking at what internal policies needed to be audited and updated, and really decide what needs to be part of this plan. We continued that work in January through April of 2024, and we really started finalizing that outreach plan to the community. And this is part of that. These focused community meetings are, they're intentional, and they're part of that outreach plan to really focus in on what the community wants to see out of each specific element. And then we continued to meet with our policy plan committee with the Planning Commission. This past spring, we continued to update Board of Supervisors and our board and area commissions and councils. And we began that informational outreach phase, that first phase of public outreach. And some of you may have been involved in the public meeting phase of that, where we did some broad overall, what is the policy plan, what does it do, and where the project is. Where we are today, looking at, we're now in November of 2024, we're continuing focused meetings on each individual topic. And so, this meeting is just one of many that focus in on different policy plan topics. We're continuing now our staff research, identifying areas that really need to be investigated in greater detail. And we're starting the phase where we're looking at policy development. So, where we are in the policy plan, what needs to change, and how might it change to better accommodate where we are. Going forward, you'll see in the first part of 2025, we'll have some continued broader community meetings, and we're starting to draft that plan guidance. We'll have that published for the community, and we'll be continuing developing the policies with the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission. And then through June to the fall of 2025, about a year from now, this is when we really start to finalize those policy recommendations, detail what exactly we would recommend as staff to be updated in the policy plan. We would go through a series of public hearings, as is typical with plan amendments, both through the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. And then we would ultimately hope for that adoption in the fall of 2025. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead. I've given you quite an update on kind of where we are and where we've been, but I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Stephanie, who's going to detail the specifics of the Parks and Recreation Policy Plan update. Stephanie?
Thanks, Ryan. Good evening. As Ryan mentioned, my name is Stephanie Cornejo, and I supervise our long-range planning section at the Fairfax County Park Authority. It's a pleasure to be with you all today, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to generally talk about the Parks and Recreation element, outline the 2 phases of updates, and talk specifically about the phase 1 updates that we're looking at today. So the current plan recognizes the critical role of our park system that plays into shaping our quality of life for residents and the landscape and environment across the county. The policies focus on a wide range of park and recreation services, from park amenities, facilities, services to conservation, preservation, and the management of our natural and cultural resources. Ensuring that the Parks and Recreation element is up to speed with the county's growth, best practices, and park development, and fostering concepts of equity and inclusion to make sure that our park system is really serving everyone. And as Ryan mentioned, we are handling the update to the Parks and Recreation element in 2 phases. The first phase is a broader brush update focused on incorporating concepts from our parks, recreation, open space, and access strategy called PROSA. And this is a data-driven strategy that was adopted by our Park Authority Board about a year ago. And it's really striving to help us create an equitable access to the park system across the county. That is to say, making equitable decisions about park and recreation needs, park investments, locations, and things like that. And then phase 2 is going to be a much heavier lift, more granular update with items like our level of service standards for parks and facilities, looking at our existing park classifications, and also taking another look at our urban parks guidelines, and of course, resource management. As we go to the next slide, you may be asking, why are we updating this now? And as Ryan mentioned, it's been more than a generation since we did a comprehensive plan update to the Parks Recreation element. And so this is really being the driving force. And we want to ensure that changes to our internal county and park authority policies are incorporated in the update overall. And so things like our park system plan, park master plans, our strategic plan, our needs assessment, our parks and open space system plan, and our strategic plan are all incorporated and key considerations in the overall update to the parks recreation element. And then also very important to our county and residents is incorporating equity, ensuring that our service delivery standards are on task. And so it's keeping up with the times in terms of evolving approaches of things like resource protection. And then, of course, on the holistic scale, focus on healthy communities, walkability to parks, and incorporate our new trail strategies. So now we're going to focus on PROSA, and this is a data-driven strategy to help create an equitable park system where residents can access a quality park within a 10-minute walk from their home. The strategy provides a high-level approach, a path forward for improved park access and a balance of recreation experiences countywide. And most importantly, PROSA advances the Park Authority's mission, strategic plan, objectives, and the county's strategic plan priorities, and the One Fairfax policy. As you can see on the screen, PROSA has 4 main components to improve 10-minute walk access to Park Authority parks. So we're looking at who does and does not have access to an FCPA park within a 10-minute walk from their home. And this is a nationwide best practice. Then turning to enhance access to complete park experiences, it's not only about getting to a park, we're looking to ensure that there's something for everyone at the park once you get there. We want to offer a variety of experiences at our parks, and this is what we're calling complete park experiences. And to dive into that a little bit more, by complete park experiences, we're looking at high-level recreation types. So active recreation, passive and contemplative experiences, social gathering recreation, and natural cultural recreation. The third element of PROSA is to improve habitat connectivity, which is core to our mission to preserve natural and cultural areas. And then we're going to take all that data, look at all these gaps and opportunities from these three elements, and look at them through our equity lens to help analyze and prioritize recreation needs. And so in essence, PROSA is a data-driven strategy to help inform decision-making. And now that we've looked at a broad overview of PROSA, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of each of these. So first on the list are improved 10-minute walk access to FCPA parks. You may be asking, why a 10-minute walk? Nationwide, local governments and park systems use a 10-minute walk as a standard for measuring accessibility to parks. Research has shown that a 10-minute walk access to parks improves healthy outcomes for the community. There's also less occurrence of depression, anxiety, and stress, and more connected communities. As a nationwide best practice and standard, over 300 communities across the country have adopted the 10-minute walk access to a park. Additionally, this effort's been led by the Trust for Public Land, National Recreation and Park Association, and the Urban Land Institute as a best nationwide practice. And we're excited to amplify this because 10-minute walk access is currently recognized in the parks recreation element. We're just going to bring it out a bit more. So in fact, when we look at who does and doesn't have access to a 10-minute walk to a park authority park, we know that 52% of residents are able to currently walk to an FCPA park, while 48% of residents do not have the same access. As you can see in the graphic in the center of the slide, when we talk about 10-minute walk access, we're measuring the distance from residents' homes to public park entrances, using safe pathways, including crosswalks, sidewalks, and trails. Next, we'll talk through complete park access. So we're not only striving to achieve better access to parks, we also want to ensure that residents are able to benefit from different recreation experiences once they get to that park. Again, this is what we're calling complete park experiences. What that means for us is that parks has something for everyone and has a good balance of recreational experiences. Our goal here is to provide a variety of experiences across the community. So not every park is going to have all these big experiences, but that people can access these variety of experiences within a 10-minute walk of their home or a 5-minute drive from their home. And to help provide a baseline of park experiences, we're looking specifically at parks that are developable, like those that are classified as local, district, and county-wide parks. And the third element of PROSA, we go to the next slide, is we know natural resources play an essential role in providing critical environmental ecosystem services, as well as offering a very high quality of life for residents. And PROSA looks at habitat connectivity and identifies opportunity for habitat health at existing parks, identify whether there are opportunities to expand habitat connectivity through existing parkland or potential future parkland acquisition. So as part of PROSA, we're focused on two primary metrics. We're looking at improving tree canopy at park sites, and then also addressing invasive plant species in areas with the greatest threats to a healthy ecosystem. As I mentioned before, most importantly, we'll look at all these gaps and use an equity lens to analyze and prioritize projects and inform decision-making. And it's crucial to distinguish equity and equality. The image on the right of the screen shows the two concepts, and we'll talk through them. So equality means that each individual or group of people is given the same resources opportunities. So as you can see, the top half of the image illustrates this concept. It shows that everyone has the same size bicycle to use, although not everyone can use it. Equity recognizes that each person has different circumstances and allocates the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. So looking at the bottom half of the image, Instead of giving everyone the same bicycle, everyone receives the exact bicycle needed to reach the outcome of being able to use it. So at the Park Authority, the PROSA equity lens helps allocate park and recreation opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome across the county. And that equal outcome is providing access for everyone to enjoy their parks. So the PROSA, oh, sorry, Ryan, one more item, sorry, excuse me. Thank you. The PROSA equity lens is made up of two components. We're built off of one Fairfax's vulnerability index, and then to create the Park Authority Racial Equity Index. And we're looking at high and very high areas called opportunity areas. And they're called opportunity areas. It's the greatest opportunity to impact our residents. And then we also look at density to understand how many people are served in an area. So in essence, the PROSA equity lens uses the data-driven strategy to help inform equitable service delivery and resource allocation. And so in essence, for this phase 1 update, we're looking to incorporate our PROSA strategy elements. And I'll pass it back to you, Ryan. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. That was excellent. At this time, I know Stephanie and I have done a lot of talking. I'd like to open it up to questions and discussions from you, the attendees. Again, if you'd please raise your hand and we'll call on you using the raise feature. Or if you'd like to, you're welcome to put a question in the chat and we'll be monitoring that as well. Hi, Mary, I see your hand.
Hi. Yeah, I have two questions or points. So one is, I don't know if the policy plan under equity addresses fees or if it's pretty strictly on land use policy. But I know there's some talk of the Park Service charging sliding scale fees at the rec centers. And I think that would be a really big thing to do for equity, is to allow people who have lower incomes to participate in the rec centers. As a senior on a real limited income, I'm finding it harder and harder to access the pool. And that's something that's really important to a lot of seniors. And it just, the fees are high for people with low income. I know there's some community centers that have some recreation, but I really like to see a graduated fee. The other issue is that the county has been really good at identifying land that it could use for affordable housing in its own land, and kind of wondering if the Park Service, Park Authority, and the school system might also do some kind of inventory if there's any. I'm not talking about environmentally fragile land or wetlands or anything like that. I'm talking about land that might be on a road, with transit, that or maybe a old golf course or something. I don't know, something that might be appropriate for affordable housing. That would be another good way to get people to the parks who are of lower income or middle income. They if you can't get the parks to the people, you can bring the people to live near the parks. So it's just something to think about. Take a survey of your map in the GIS system of all the parks and see if there aren't some that might be appropriate for housing. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks, Mary. Those are two really good questions. On your first question of the fee structure, typically the comprehensive plan is coming at this from a land use perspective, and so it tends not to get into the kind of the more programmatic elements of how the park system is actually run on a day-to-day basis. I don't know, Stephanie, it's not really my area of expertise, but do you have any information on kind of the fee structure and how that was developed through an equity lens?
I do, and I echo Ryan. Mary, thank you so much for your comments. I'm not sure you access a link to access the chat, but I dropped a link into an existing project the Park Authority is taking on in coordination with our Neighborhood and Community Services Department, NCS. So currently, separate from the comprehensive plan process, we are currently comprehensively reviewing our fees and revenue funding structure to determine strategies on how we can enhance equity through park services and, including our rec centers, like you mentioned, and pool access services. So this is something that our agencies that are taking currently and studying, and I'd be happy to follow up with more details too, if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to hear more.
And Mary, on your second question of affordable housing, certainly, there's a very great need for affordable housing and attainable housing here in the county. That's something that, as planners, that is at the forefront of our mind in terms of being able to provide that to the community. And of course, being close to parks and being proximate to open space certainly has health benefits. It has wellness benefits, and certainly something that we want to see incorporated into all of our affordable housing work. Having that proximity. I'm not aware of any efforts to divest any of the park authority or schools land for public housing or affordable housing uses. I don't know, Stephanie. Can you clarify that? I'm just not familiar with what the park authority's current plans are.
Yeah. I couldn't have limited comments because I don't work in our real estate side, so the management of land itself. But I know we do work closely with our colleagues across other agencies to help provide, not quite to your question, but to help provide park access on development sites too, in addition to publicly available land. But I'm not sure about divesting parkland for housing. I'm not
So it
familiar
might
with
be
it.
it might be at the policy level. It could say something about periodically reviewing the parkland and to see if any is more suitable for, to kind of give a favor to affordable housing. If there's some parkland that's not necessarily essential to parks, but is on a road or could be divested or swapped for something else, that there should be maybe a priority given to affordable housing as part of the equity policy initiative.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Mary. I will say that the demand for public lands and the demand to convert those into affordable housing is certainly something that we're looking at the county level. Recently we had a proposal to develop affordable housing at the government center on some surplus parking, which has gone forward, and they're just now beginning construction on that project. And so, there are those types of projects of where we're taking surplus public lands and converting them into affordable housing uses to meet the need. And so, I think it's a good comment to have about parkland as well.
Thank you.
Next, we have I see Larry. You've had your hand up. Hi, Larry. If you're talking, you may be on mute. I'm not hearing you.
So you called Mary, correct?
Yes, I called Mary, but now I'm on to you, Larry. Yes.
Okay. Well, first, I want to thank you for holding this session. Stephanie, it's wonderful to see you again. And so I think to myself that parks in Fairfax offer a variety of different amenities that people appreciate. I'm concerned in particular about two things, and maybe you could speak a little bit more about them. One is I'm concerned about the impact of invasives in particular on our county parks, and they're kind of taking over the parks in certain areas, and it really degrades things. And I think that's a resource need. We need more resources. And so I'm also thinking about the equity question that you raised. So I'm wondering what success looks like, because if you don't have a metric that tells you what your goal is, it seems like you'll never know if you've reached it, no matter how much you do, or you could claim success without having done anything. So those are not easy questions to answer, Stephanie, but I know you can handle it.
Thank you, Larry. It's great to see you. I'm going to touch on the last one first, if you're okay with that. What success looks like for PROSA under the PROSA lens is ensuring that everyone has 10-minute walk access to a park authority park. That's at the grand, very high level. When we go into the community level analysis and site analysis, we do look at other public park providers. So is there a school? Is that playground in the school accessible, visible? You know, we look at the ecosystem of parks, right? And so I'd say success looks like everyone across the county increasing walkable access. So just as an example, in the last year from our park improvements in 2023, from I think opening up at least two new parks, with opening up being developing them with park entrances and park amenities, and also improving existing access. We actually went from 1% of improved access to parks by 1%, and that was just in 1 year. And so success looks like increasing that 10-minute walk access, and it's also improving complete park access. When I say that, we developed kind of a park score of sorts, park experience score, to tell us the balance of those 4 main recreation types. We use this for our parks to understand if I'm in one area of the county and all I have access to, and not picking on anyone in particular, but I'll just start with active recreation, then where are the places where I can socially recreate at parks? Are there picnic shelters? Maybe is there an amphitheater in the area? Just those sort of experiences. So success looks like improving that ratio of park experiences and also increasing the percentage of walkable access to FCPA parks, and specifically their equity lens. I hope that's helpful for the second question. And then going to your first question, it's an excellent point about invasives. They really are detrimental to ecosystem health. And that is something that we're looking at incorporating in our language for this comp plan update. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, that's helpful. Thank you.
You. Oh, Ryan, you're on mute. Sorry.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Larry. Just to repeat, both good questions. I see, Glenna, that you have your hand up, but I'm going to switch over to the chat real quick and take a question from Elaine. Elaine asks, the overview that showed walkability, do you have that information in more detail, either a map or data, so we can look at our neighborhoods to see how they're rated? Stephanie, can you answer that one for Elaine?
I can. Elaine, thanks for bringing this question up. I'm going to add to the chat and I'll see if I can reply. I haven't done this in a while. I'm going to reply there. I'm sharing a resource that's not the park authorities, not the counties, but it's by the Trust for Public Land. And they have actually, the Trust for Public Land, it's a nonprofit organization focusing on improving park spaces across the US. They have a tool called ParkServe, and it shows walk access across the US. It's an incredible tool. It shows it by the park boundary, so not to park entrances, but it gives a sense of park access in our region. And if you have any issues accessing that link, please let me know. I don't have anything shareable, but we do have GIS data on our park entrances, which are our public park entrances. And we're using a specific tool in Esri through GIS, so we know which are the safe crosswalks. Where do crosswalks exist? Where are there sidewalks exist? To understand that relationship between a park entrance and estimated walk access.
Okay, Glenna, you've got your hand up, I see.
Yes, thank you. So I'm the tree commissioner for Franconia District. And so I love that you talked about part of the considerations or focus has to do with the habitat connectivity, tree canopy, invasives. totally agreeing with Larry. I mean, the invasives are really taking over everything, not just in the parklands, but and then someone before talking about equity issues related to the user fee that is required to use some of the facilities and parks that are under Parks and Recreation. So this gets into resourcing issues. And I received an email saying that the county has requested that the Fairfax County Park Authority cut 10% of its budget. And a lot of things are potentially on the chopping block, which would include some of the things we're talking about here tonight. But it talks about cuts for trail maintenance, tree funding, and a nature center potentially, how that would affect equity kind of issues. And I know this is not a discussion of the budget, that I know this is a policy discussion, but they go hand in hand. And, you cannot do the kind of things that we are talking about here in terms of updating these policies and at the same time asking for a 10% cut for a program that is already not funded adequately. So I don't know how that enters in to these kinds of discussions, but the whole resourcing piece can't be ignored when we're talking about this policy plan amendment. It has to be considered, I think. So that's my comment.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. I don't know if Stephanie, you can comment on the budget and some of the resource constraints at all.
Yeah,
it's a little bit outside the scope of the policy plan amendment, but certainly if you have that information, please.
Yeah, I can share a little bit about it. So all county agencies and departments were asked to propose a 10% cut in their budget. And I'll emphasize that in the Park Authority, there's like no fat to trim. And so our senior leadership team has shared in every message on these proposed cuts that we're asked to provide recommendations. We do not recommend any of them. And so even though we have to put forth some level of recommendations to adhere to the expectation that's been asked, we do not recommend any of them move forward. Should any budget cuts come through to the Park Authority. And that's what I'm familiar with this particular item. I'm sure it's not answering the full question, but I hope that is supportive in some way.
Thank you. I mean, it's at least giving me context in terms of what's kind of currently happening. I just think that the parks and the accessibility for people to be able to go to green spaces and is so important for health and wellness and people's well-being and our connection to nature and to the earth, and children being able to learn about that connection and how important it is. I mean, I think we need to make that a priority as much as developing every inch of land.
Great, thanks, Glenna. I'm going to switch over to the chat now, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but John McNeil says, do Indigenous tribes have free access to park event facilities? I don't know, Stephanie, can you answer that question as far as Indigenous tribes and access?
That's a great question. To be honest, I don't know the answer to that. I can mention, and I'm going to try to pull up the number. I know for park event facilities, if that's at all speaking to reserving different athletic fields or courts, for event use or use as a league, that's coordinated by our colleagues in a different department. So we build, create the park, but reservations of those facilities, some of them are handled by another department.
And then Elaine has asked if the community is supposed to use the school playgrounds as a substitute for parks, who pays for the repairs and upkeep? I know in some cases we share facilities, or we have playgrounds on school ground that the community uses as well.
That can vary by site, Elaine, but it typically the school at FCPS, Fairfax County Public Schools, will maintain those playgrounds. The park, in terms of other facilities, like for example, athletic fields or open fields, the park authority does maintain, I think, a lot, if not most, of FCPS fields.
So I'm sorry, can I just clarify that 10-minute access walking from someone's house to a park entrance? Does that include the athletic fields and the school playgrounds and those kinds of places, or are we talking about the actual park?
So we're talking about a park authority park, and to the entrance, not talking about kind of distinguishing the items you just described. We're not talking about the distance from like someone's home to the edge of the athletic field, only getting to the park itself. And is that helpful? Okay.
And I think that you brought up a good point there, Glenna. There are other parks and other park operators within the county. We've got the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority. We've got the Reston Association. We've got the National Park Service. We've got, I think, some state lands as well. So there are a number of other park and open space kind of operators and maintainers in the county. For those of you who may not have been aware, I mean, it's a big county. We have a lot of that, but for these purposes, we acknowledge those, but really our policies are focused more on the park authority parks and the things that we're able to control as a county. But certainly we do work with those other agencies on a daily basis to ensure that what they're doing is compatible with what we're doing and vice versa. Let's see here. I see Elaine, you've got your hand up. I think you just beat Larry by a minute or two, but how can I help?
Well, along what was just discussed, I took a look at that website you showed, and what it's identifying are not real parks. And I don't believe this big green area that they're saying is a 10-minute walkability. You can do it, especially with the way the roads are connected. But just a couple blocks over from me, there's an area on the maps that reads Franconia Park, but it's just some not common area, but area that didn't get incorporated into this housing development that goes down a hillside to a drainage area and into a resource protected area. There's no way you could even walk in there, but it's identified as a big green park on that map. So I'd really like to see what you use to come up with those numbers of 52% and 48%, because clearly this map is not indicating that. It's way off.
Yeah, thank you, Elaine. As I mentioned, that was just an example resource. That's not our data that we use, but just to share a little bit about what to look at, a little bit about park access. But I'm happy to talk offline more about the data if that's something you really would like to dive into. I'm not the data expert, which is why I'm not going to be able to answer too hard of your question. But we have, again, this is a data-driven approach to using GIS data that maps our public park entrances, and then uses a very common feature in GIS that that provides an estimate of a safe walk access to our park entrances.
Yeah, will you have your email somewhere? Because I would like to follow up.
Yeah, would it work for you if I put it in the chat? Oh, perfect. Thank you, Ryan, too. Yes.
We have here are some extra resources here while we're talking. Certainly, I don't want to wrap this up at all because this is a great conversation. But we have this email here is our primary email address, and then we can put some additional information. I see Stephanie's dropped her email into the chat as well. So you have that as contact information, and I'll put mine in also, so you have that in case there's any questions on the update itself.
And I'll also
Okay.
follow up.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry, Ryan.
No, please go ahead.
I'll also follow up that GIS is a really helpful tool, right? It's data-driven strategies, and they're giving us glimpses, right? Because our focus is looking at who doesn't have access to a park. We know there's a gap, big gaps across the county to a Fairfax County Park Authority park, and we're using our equity lens to prioritize, to inform decision making, to prioritize park recreation needs.
Hi, Larry. I see you had your hand up again next.
Yeah, so I just wanted to weigh in on this question of the 10-minute access. So I live probably within 10 minutes, or probably maybe a bit more, from the GW Parkway. And I feel very fortunate. And I was thinking the 10-minute criteria seems a bit black and white. So it seems to be a bit clear cut. And I think that there are probably more gradations than that. So you take people in my neighborhood, and I think we all love the GW Parkway, and folks drive to other parks that are fairly close by. And I would just suggest that at least personally, I think it would be reasonable to give some credit for those other park access in your methodology. And part of the reason is just reasonableness in terms of what you could do. We've already talked about the fiscal constraints on the park authority and the ability to fund things, and it just seems like we may be able to do a better job of reaching our goals if our goals are realistic. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. To your point there, we definitely, you'll might have already seen the comprehensive plan element, the parks recreation element. There is a systems approach. So we know that we are not the only game in town. We know that there are several other public park providers like Nova Parks and cities nearby, even across, our neighbors in county, from Arlington County to Loudoun County. And so we're using the 10-minute walk access to provide to our park authority parks. That's the data we have, right? And so when we look at those gaps through our equity lens, then we look to see what other agencies and other public park providers are present there. And we do that fine-tooth comb at the community, smaller scale, and we look between those gaps. But you bring up an excellent point, and that's something that's absolutely recognized in our park and recreation element, and that will continue to be that way too.
Great, thank you both. I know, Ken, you've had your hand up for a little while. How can we help?
Yeah, absolutely. Stephanie, you mentioned habitat connectivity, and I was just wondering if you could expand on it. I know that's an ongoing issue at the Commonwealth level as well in terms of what localities can do. But yeah, I was just hoping you could expand on it, some of the work that y'all have done in the past and how that looks different going forward.
Great question, Ken. So in terms of habitat connectivity for PROSA, we're using available data that we have right now, particularly twofold. We're looking at existing tree canopy, and that's countywide information from the, and then tree canopy, and then we're also looking at the prevalence of invasive species by within the park. It's not just the park as a whole. There are actually subsections in the park that our colleagues Natural Resources branch have developed so that we're aware of where the prevalence of invasive species are on one side of the park versus another. We're looking at that through that lens right now. In the future, probably in the next couple of years, we're going to be pivoting from looking at not only those two items, but also looking at more robust GIS data that we're working on currently in the Park Authority. I hope that is helpful. I feel like there's another part of your question I didn't answer. If you wouldn't mind circling back, I'd appreciate it.
No, I was wondering, I know that just through my day job, that tree canopy has been a big discussion. I think a lot of the, Planning District 8 has the ability to do things that I think other areas do not. And so that's been an ongoing discussion. And then continuing to strengthen and fund localities' ability to fight invasive species, and obviously trying to, I guess, segregate them to parks individually is a bit difficult. So I was just wondering, with the ongoing discussions in my work in Richmond, if there was anything that, that would be helpful in terms of your perspective on what would be helpful for moving forward, and then also the work that you're currently doing to get a better understanding. That's all.
Thank you for circling back, Ken. I'll mention that for improving tree canopy, one area that we've been looking at more recently since the adopting PROSA at the Park Authority is looking at when we do go in to develop a park, whether that's maybe a one-off amenity, maybe redeveloping one playground, or redeveloping existing amenities, developing new amenities. We're looking at also the tree canopy for that park, and looking at ways to, through the existing project budget, include maybe like a tree-lined sidewalk within the park, or maybe creating more forested area around a playground to improve nature play, right, and shading people who are using different facilities. So that's one technique that we've been looking at in particular recently to improve tree canopy at parks. Hope that's helpful.
Hi, Elaine, you had a question?
Yeah, this is kind of like an overview thing, but I've attended all of these meetings that I can in the different areas, and I just have a question about when all this material is coming out. My understanding is probably it'll be after Christmas, the first of the year. There'll actually be like text to look at, but I'm wondering how long we're going to have, given there's multiple of these documents at once. I'm really concerned of like we're going to get 30 days to read all of this stuff and process it, and it's just not going to work.
Yeah, we know this is a lot of information, and so it's to be honest with you, that's something that I'm not quite familiar with yet as far as how we're going to actually do the logistics of that review. But I will say that, from the very beginning, this has been on the kind of the forefront of this is kind of how do we deal with this amount of information? This is a large update at one time, and I can say that, whatever approach we ultimately settle on when speaking among staff and among the planning commission and those are involved in kind of decision making process, we'll be sure to give the public enough time to review the information, recognizing that there is a lot here. I don't know if that involves a staggered approach, or if we do something where we just have an extended review period where we release everything at once. There's pros and cons of all of that. So, but as soon as we have that information, we'll be sure to share that with the community, so there's a sense of what to expect in that review process when we get there.
Okay, and do you know those meetings that were supposed to be coming up in the communities over the next couple months that have been canceled, what they were exactly?
Those were essentially, I hate to say kind of more of the same, so to speak, but just, a lot of it covers the same material that we've already covered in other public meetings. Ultimately, those were canceled, as I understand it, to allow staff some additional time to do some background research, and then really, so then the next round of community meetings will really be focused on that research and kind of a status update of where we are and the work that we've accomplished versus merely repeating a lot of the same types of information that we've had in prior community meetings. It's just really, it's just a matter of resourcing, and we want to make sure that we're giving proper attention to actually getting the work done, as well as the education component of the whole project.
So when there's a community meeting, it would go through all these topic areas?
That's, we may do a series of larger community meetings to discuss the plan as a whole, or we may also repeat the same format here where we've got different topical meetings. Again, that's a question that we need to have internally answered for us in terms of what might be better for the overall review process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Larry. I see your hand up.
So I've heard some things that relate to Elaine's questions.
Mhm.
Basically, the one thing is that meetings were canceled because they basically would have been repeating information that's been shared in many different forums. But I think a lot of people were asking, so far you've provided very general information in these sessions, but what would be great is to really see what it's going to look like in terms of adjustments to the comprehensive plan. And so what I understand they're going to do is they're canceling some of these meetings so that they could finish up white papers. And then the other thing they're going to do is they're going to add some additional meetings early next year to provide for more community input. And then they could see, I think, not only the white papers, but hopefully the whole package all together with some of the proposed changes that they would suggest and give people, because that's where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah.
And something you said early on was that this is a planning document, but I think it's really important because the comprehensive plan guides decisions by the board and the planning commission and others, I guess, and staff in making decisions on site-specific reviews. So when someone comes in with a special exception, they can look at the comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan goals may affect some of the things they might ask of a developer. And so these things can be really important, and that I think is worth recognizing and emphasizing well. Elaine, I hope that's helpful for you.
Yeah, thanks.
No, absolutely, Larry. I think you really focused in on what I was trying to say in a way you may have said it better. But it's a balance between, we want to be able to utilize the time that we have with the community, both on kind of broad education, kind of like what we're doing in prior meetings, what we're doing in some more focus with Parks and Rec this evening, but also we want to be able to have those conversations of, here's what the actual proposal is, here's how it's going to affect the plan that's currently been adopted, and kind of here's what the recommendation is, and kind of have that vector checked with the community to make sure that we're on the right page and that we're considering the things that we need to consider in that update and get that feedback. So certainly all of that is to come. So it's the intent of canceling these meetings wasn't to cancel community outreach altogether. Certainly not. It's to allow us time to develop the additional information that's needed for the community to provide input on. So thank you, Larry. I appreciate that. Yeah, your clarification there, that was helpful. Let's see, we've got a question in the chat. Again, on the question of the access by Indigenous tribes. Speaking of the monetized outdoor event shelters and spaces, is that, I guess that would be the rental areas, renting of picnic shelters and so on and so forth.
Thank you for circling back on this. I'm not particularly familiar with the fees and who and who doesn't have fee waivers for accessing picnic shelters. But I did put in the chat a phone number or email to call within the Park Authority to get that information. So hopefully that's helpful. And I also included a link in the chat. Hopefully it's accessible. If not, it's easy. You can Google Fairfax County or whichever search browser you use, Fairfax County Park Authority picnic reservations, and that will lead to the same website. These are the top billing there. But hopefully that's helpful and what you're looking for, at least in the right direction. Oh, I see. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you for bringing up that point.
Mhm.
Sorry, Ryan.
Oh, no. Oh, I was just saying we've kind of gotten to a lull in the conversation. If anyone has anything more to add, certainly we will we'll stay here and make sure that everyone's questions are answered to everyone's satisfaction. And if we don't know the answer, we'll certainly point you in the right direction or get the right information out to you. I do just want to mention that it is 8 o'clock, so if anyone needs to go, I know everyone's got other commitments this evening, and I greatly appreciate that everyone has taken time out of their busy schedules to come hang out with us online about this project. It certainly is important work. We're looking forward to doing it, and we're looking forward to continuing the conversation with you all and with your neighbors as we move forward in the project. So I will stay here. Stephanie will stay here a bit longer, but if any other things come up, we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, y'all.
Mhm.